To follow this next CAPRA Tutorials vulnerability definition video, Seismic Vulnerability, you will need the CAPRA Vulnerability module. To start the exercise, 2 vulnerability functions will be added to the current functions library from the vulnerability functions database included in the module. To do this, click Open and then Search in Database. In the hazard type selection list, you should check that the hazard of interest is currently selected. If it is not, select the corresponding hazard and click Search. This list will be updated immediately with the vulnerability functions included in the database for the selected hazard. Now select the corresponding functions by clicking Add. When this is done, the selected functions will be included in the current functions library. The current functions library can be checked with the tools displayed in the Functions Browser drop-down menu. Another way to create a new vulnerability function in the CAPRA Vulnerability module is by clicking New, then Function, and then inputting the information Author, function name, and description of the new vulnerability function. It should be borne in mind that the hazard type cannot be changed because each functions library is for a single hazard, defined when the first functions were added to the library. When Accept is clicked, the vulnerability function will be added to the current library and it will be available in the Functions Browser. Continuing with the tutorial exercise, an additional function must be added in accordance with the reference documentation. The above steps must be repeated with the new information. In addition to the created functions and those imported from the database, functions can be added to the current library from files on the hard drive. To do this, click Open, then Search File in Local System, and then select the desired function file to be added to the library. This last procedure must be repeated until all functions listed in the reference material have been included. Parameter values for the current function are shown in the Modify Function drop-down menu. To modify a vulnerability function, it must be located in the Functions Browser drop-down menu. Click on the graph or on Edit to load that function as the current function. This last step displays the function in the main window and loads the parameters values and additional function information into the Metadata and Modify Function drop-down menus. Once the desired function has been selected, necessary changes to parameters can be made. In the case of a concrete frames function added as a new function, the method should be selected as capacity. Number of points that define the function should be set as 30. Intensity type as peak ground displacement. Maximum intensity value as 30, intensity units as centimeters, and the building height value changed to 14 meters. The structural vibration period should be set as 0.7 seconds. Design strength coefficient as 0.22. Overstrength factor relating true yield strength to design strength as 1.25. Overstrength factor relating ultimate strength to yield strength as 2.25. And ductility as 5.25. Changes made to parameters are updated promptly in the main window, making it possible to run a parameter sensitivity analysis. Additional changes will be made to parameters, such as damage for plastic state to 0.08. Curvature between plastic and ultimate state to 2.6. Interstory height to 2.8 meters. Stories to 5. And deformation level to 10. Finally, parameters must be checked and the maximum intensity value adjusted to complete the illustration of the vulnerability function. In continuing to fully define the vulnerability function, a default human vulnerability function should be defined. Because this example is for a seismic hazard described as peak ground acceleration in GAL units, convert the units by selecting spectral elastic acceleration from the type selection list in the intensity configuration box, and the corresponding unit as GAL from the units selection list. If Apply Changes is clicked, the intensity type and units will be updated in the main graph. Clicking Update Function will save the changes to the current function. The following parameter changes will be made to the unreinforced masonry function. That function should be selected as the current function in the Functions Browser drop-down menu. When the unreinforced masonry function has been selected, the method should be selected as capacity, the number of points that define the function should be set as 30, the intensity type as peak ground displacement, the intensity units as centimeters, the maximum intensity value as 0.3, the height changed to 5.6 meters, structural period as 0.14, design strength coefficient as 0.16, overstrength factor relating true yield strength to design strength as 1.3, overstrength factor relating ultimate strength to yield strength as 1.5, ductility as 1.5, damage and curvature for plastic state as 0.15 and 6.5 respectively, curvature between plastic and ultimate state as 5, interstory height as 2.8 meters, stories as 2, and deformation level as 1. Finally, the parameters must be checked and the maximum intensity value should be adjusted for a full illustration of the vulnerability function. To continue to fully define the vulnerability function, a default human vulnerability function should be defined. Because the example is for a seismic hazard described as peak ground acceleration in GAL units, convert the units by selecting spectral elastic acceleration from the type selection list on the intensity configuration box and the corresponding GAL unit as GAL from unit selection list. If Apply Changes is clicked, the intensity type and units will be updated on the main graph. By clicking on Update Function, the changes to the current function will be saved. To save a function in a file, select the desired function as the current function from the Functions Browser drop-down menu by clicking Save and then Function to Hard Drive. A Save File dialog box is displayed where the path can be selected and the vulnerability function file name entered. This last step should be followed for the unreinforced masonry vulnerability function. The Capra vulnerability module makes it possible to save all vulnerability functions included in the current library. To do this, click Save and then Library to Hard Drive. This will display a Save File dialog box where the path can be selected and the vulnerability library file name entered. The module will check if vulnerability files exist at the path selected and will ask for confirmation to save them if required. This concludes the tutorial. Thank you.